Broadcasting from the commodity capital of the world, Zurich, Switzerland, this is Insider's Guide to Energy.
Insider's Guide to Energy, ETRM mini-series, brought to you by Fidectus, where post-trading matters, and Falls and independent management and consulting boutique, creating impacts for clients and markets.
Welcome to Insider's Guide to Energy, ETRM mini-series. Today's episode is with CTRM-Cloud. Today I have Sulhi Akmehmet with me. Sulhi, welcome to the program.
Well, pleasure being on your show. Pleasure meeting you guys.
And I apologize that I may have murdered your name because you had a big smile when I tried to say it. So
No.
How do you pronounce your name? Just let's get the audience to know how we pronounce it properly.
Sulhi Akmehmet.
Thank you. All right. And so let's start off by a little bit of who you are in CTRM-Cloud. Who is that?
Oh, yeah. CTRM-Cloud is a new, relatively new player in the CTRM space. We started about 5 years ago. We are an experienced group of energy and commodity industry veterans, alongside with a group of technology professionals who have, a lot of experience in building, trading and risk management software in their past lives.
Okay, so you're a 5-year-old company. Where are you headquartered?
We are quite distributed. I myself am in San Francisco. The bulk of the technology team is here in San Francisco, but we have people in the US. We have in North America. We have Houston, New York. And we have people in Europe. We have people in Paris and London.
Oh, fantastic. All right. And so what I like to start the segments out with is the whole reason we're doing this ETRM mini-series is there's a premise of mine that the ETRM space is a crowded space today, that there's change coming. And you talked about being a 5-year-old company, so I would count you into that change coming. So maybe you can help our audience from a perspective of what do you see is happening in the industry and are changes coming? Is there something different taking place today?
Yeah, so let me try to kind of answer that in two pieces. One is the energy trading, the energy industry itself is changing because people use I've seen in one of these conferences that the 3 Ds of the energy industry, the decentralization, decarbonization, and digitization. I mean, digitization is, I guess, old news. And decarbonization is something that started, but now I think it's really picked up steam. I mean, a lot of people think that it's the international organizations or the governments that actually have to drive that, but not really. Most of the carbon trading is voluntary carbon trading. So the world economy and the individual companies are actually pushing that forward. And that momentum is going to really shift the industry into a, more and more decarbonization. And there's going to be lots of changes that come with that. The renewable assets and how they trade and the particular unique characteristics of renewable assets, such as the intermittency and more balancing needs, lots of short-term trading. You hear a lot about algo trading these days, more than you used to. So all of that stuff is happening, and then we see the COVID pandemic really kind of was a wake-up call as well to kind of have us understand what can happen in supply chain and the whole trading and risk management, how that can affect the industry in that way. So along with all of those changes on the ETRM CTRM space, you got the kind of the legacy vendors. They have large client bases and very, very complete product, but it's based on 20, 30-year-old technology. So things are not really ideal. And then you have a lot of newcomers, and one unique thing about the CTRM ETRM space, maybe different from other B2B spaces is that you kind of have to figure out your niche. You can't be saying I'm going to do oil and ags at the same time and be the best in both. You kind of have to pick that, and then there's lots of regional differences. So each ETRM, CTRM firm has kind of picked a niche on that front, but also kind of technology approach. I mean, cloud is, everybody says cloud, but not everything's the same kind of cloud. Some people are kind of pushing more into a software as a service model. And some companies are thinking, and this includes the legacy vendors, we're going to host it on the cloud, so we're going to save people from the hardware cost and the hardware management cost. But in terms of the system architecture and how it serves the client's needs, it's pretty much like an on-prem system. It's just hosted on the cloud. So those are kind of the highlights I see.
Okay. So you've been doing this 5 years. So have you seen more recently changes since you started the company? I mean, you talked about COVID, so obviously that's only a couple of years old. So that one probably has been a change. But are there things that your customers are asking you now that when you first started the company that they weren't asking for?
So on the cloud side, I think people have more of an appreciation. I mean, I have to do less talking when I talk about software as a service, and I say, there's cloud hosted versus software as a service as kind of maybe two ends of the spectrum. More people actually understand that and appreciate that. That's on the technology front. And on kind of industry trends, I've definitely seen a lot more clients talking to us about renewables and emissions and in general carbon trading. There's definitely that. I think that's kind of picked up its momentum. I mean, it depends on how you measure that, but in the last couple of years, there's more and more of that, and we see more companies coming to us and asking us for that kind of functionality.
That's actually a very interesting topic. So functionality around renewables and electrification. I mean, this is definitely something that the industry is driving. I think also business models are partially changing. If you look at some players in the market, I mean, not the vendors, but the power producers, and they need also new tools and new functionality, in my point of view, to cope with those new challenges that come with renewables. Thinking of GOOs or PPAs, and their whole deal life cycle looks different, or at least more complex. So I'm wondering what CTRM-Cloud is offering, especially to your clients in terms of renewables, and how you help them coping with those new developments and complexity.
Yeah, you mentioned PPAs, which is interesting because you got the 20-year, typical PPA, 15, 10, 20, maybe longer PPAs, and it's kind of like an investment vehicle, right? So there's all this investment that's going to go into renewable generation assets, and somebody has to bankroll that. And then, you have these PPA structures, and now you got the virtual PPAs where if you can kind of take multiple investments and kind of almost like build a pool out of it. So that's on the, I would say, like kind of long term. And we have clients who are in the kind of the retail space, and just like companies have to have commercial industrial companies have to kind of prove their greenness to the world. On the energy retail side, you got the same kind of drive. Can we be 80% green? 90% green? Can we be in 5 years 100% green? So a lot of utilities, energy retailers are actually investing in that. So we have some clients who have a lot of PPAs, and it's got its own nuances and the kind of the dynamicness of it, the constantly changing forecast and the structural nature of the products. On the flip side, we also see, and this comes more in kind of pure financial players, almost like spec trading, where people are kind of trying to make money off of the short-term nature of things, because the renewables are definitely pushing the boundaries on kind of forecasting and the balancing and the intermittency, all of that is brought into the system. And that needs to enable, the system needs to basically enable those companies to be connected. So we haven't, in the US, it's kind of a more complicated ecosystem. We got, a whole bunch of TSOs that you have to individually connect to. In Europe, it's different. And now we see liberalization in Japan. So maybe there's going to be things in there. There's going to be more, electricity trading in Japan. So lots of things happening on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. So I heard you saying, if I can summarize it, that the renewables and the demand or desire to get greener has a strong impact on the long-term trading, which is more represented by PPAs and also other complex structures, but also and especially on the short-term trading as well. I guess that's clearly visible when you have a wind park and it blows, or there's high wind, and then you need to cope with that in your daily short-term trading activity. So I completely agree. But I also heard you saying that lots of your clients have PPAs, and if I now gap the bridge to what you said at the very beginning, that as a smaller company, you need to have your niche where you are good in it because you cannot cover all aspects as the legacy vendors. I'm wondering, is then renewables, PPAs, and all that comes with it your USP or your strength as a CTRM-Cloud, or what is your niche?
So just to give you a little bit of history, so we started at the very beginning, we started as a kind of we thought cross-commodity risk. So we put a lot of, and we have a lot of, the team is made up of, like I said, industry veterans from the ETRM space, as well as kind of trading and risk management technology in general. So we have experience kind of building that type of architecture. So we started with a cross-commodity, cross-energy risk focus. But then we had more and more traction in power, and then from there, power and natural gas, and power and natural gas and renewables. So our focus has been really in the last, I would say, 12 to 18 months has been in those areas. So we're named CTRM-Cloud. So if I was naming the company now, maybe I would have called it ETRM-Cloud. I think eventually we'll probably go to the other commodity assets, but our focus has been basically anything to do with electricity. And when you say electricity these days, that pretty much comes with renewables and natural gas.
Okay, cool. And in terms of PPAs, again, I think that's quite especially in Europe as well, a very hot and difficult topic. If I look at what clients that I engage with struggle a bit is, of course, starting already from a pre-trade point of view, so to get to the negotiations and make a transaction. But of course, then from the post-trade point of view, to get those structures into their systems and do a proper P&L performance measurement every day, have the right valuation models, the right risk management or risk models in place. So this is something that is tricky, and I'm wondering what CTRM-Cloud can provide in that context. Do you provide a special way of flexibility to capture new payoff structures that comes with clouds? Is it easy for the client to enable those structures? Do you also provide then risk models very specific to PPAs and their complexity, and also valuation engines? So what is your offering in that context? And also hedges, I think, to mention, capture and the structured hedges that come with it.
Sure. So in terms of PPAs, we haven't done anything that kind of would be what I would call pre-trade, basically evaluation of the, is this a good PPA? How should I actually structure this? But once the deal is done, the various aspects of it, the various kind of the original forecasts, the original commitments, and as that updates along the way, we can take that data in. And it's in electricity in general, maybe different from the other commodities. There's a lot of data, the granularity is basically up to the markets, but also up to your ability to forecast and your models to forecast. We currently do not have any forecasting tools ourselves. We can take in those forecasts, and we also work with kind of quantitative shops. We have some partners here in the US that have their own models to forecast those. But once the deal is in and you're updating that forecast, we can take that data and we can kind of see how those trends are, how it's changing along the way, and basically the implied exposures from that, you can see that in risk. And then we have all kinds of other trade types, like your swaps, your options, your regular swaps, options, and futures, and other exchange traded products that allow you to maybe hedge some of that risk. We have connectivity to here in the US for electricity nodal exchange, which is I think a subsidiary of EEX, and ICE. Those are kind of the two main venues for exchange traded stuff, but a lot of trading actually happens on the TSOs directly. And in Europe, we're building a connectivity to EEX at the moment. So a lot of the hedging trades come in that way.
So I get where you're positioning. You just gave us a little bit of your market perspective. Were you first an American company? Was that your first footprint in North America, and then you're just growing into Europe now? Is that why you describe it that way?
Yeah, we started in America, and I'd say in the last couple of years, we first of all hired some people in Europe, and we also got some clients in Europe. But yes, our initial experience has been, that's why we have CME, ICE, and Nodal, and we're building EEX now. Yes, that's where we're going. And the other area that's kind of interest in the periphery now is Japan, because of the relatively recent liberalization of the markets. But Japan is kind of a more conservative market. So we're working with a partner company in Japan to see what's happening in that market and what are the opportunities in there. What do people want to trade in energy? I mean, that brings in kind of the whole LNG aspects of it. And that's another very, very active market. But yeah, so we started in North America, and now we're kind of very active in North America and Europe, and we have our eyes on Japan and the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so being focused specifically and being more of a niche for power and gas, it sounded like we're kind of your niche. Are you complementary with other ETRM systems with most of your customers, or are you generally the only system in most of your customers, or are you working in conjunction with other ones?
Good question. So I would categorize our customers and prospects that we talk to into three buckets. So I mentioned electricity, natural gas, and renewables as the areas where our functionality is the deepest. Mm-hmm. But because of our history and the desire to build a cross-commodity risk system, we actually are a pretty good system for kind of the rest of the energy and commodity space as well. So we do have customers outside of electricity and gas and renewables. In those instances, we are a complementary system, unless they're doing financial only trading. So we have some customers that are doing financial trading in oil and other commodities, and that's fine. That's not an issue for us. But the bulk logistics is not something we have now. It's in our roadmap, but we haven't built that. So the customers, our earlier customers have been kind of the ones who were kind of priced out of the market, the ETRM market. They're small shops that not necessarily couldn't afford the license costs, the upfront license costs, but maybe more importantly, the army of business and technical analysts you have to have with one of these old, bulky, monolithic ETRM systems to implement it, to maintain it, to run it, to make sure that it's up and running and can support your business. So the smaller shops don't have those people. All we have is the users. So We've had a lot of success in that. So these are kind of startups or a small organization, a lot of CNI customers that have to procure a lot of energy or other commodities for their business that don't really have a big trading team. So we've had success there because they were sitting in spreadsheets, and it was an easy, it was, you know, fit for purpose because they go in, they turn on the system, they can start using it right away. So one of our customers is managing a $600 million annual energy budget, but it's a team of like a handful of people. And that's one. The other one is a kind of more larger organizations. They are not necessarily ready to do a full-blown replacement. You know, they have one of the big names, and they've had that big name for a long, long time. They're afraid to shift it. But one of the things that happens with those legacy systems is that when there's a change in the markets, they can't really quickly adjust. They have this long release cycle. So something happens in the markets, you know, they first have to build it. That has to be included in the next release, which is probably a year or two down the line. And the organization has to kind of gather the forces to do an upgrade project. That's another year or two down the line. So between the time the industry change happens and the users of the system have access to that functionality, is multiple years. So that's a reason why some of the larger organizations have kind of come to us and said, can you, for this particular, as a point solution, can you come in and solve this problem? So, you know, building the system, we looked at integration, the ease of integration a lot. So that's an area of focus for us. So we can definitely sit side by side along with other systems and integrate to other systems. So that's been kind of the other type of customer. We also have had some, you know, the last category is probably full-on replacement projects. That's been more, not the largest players, but more kind of the small to medium-sized players that kind of have the appetite to, you know, basically get rid of their legacy system and move on to a new system.
So your company's name has the word cloud in it.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about the small players getting on board. You're talking about not needing staff. You seem to keep mentioning attributes of perhaps a cloud system. So maybe tell us a little bit about your architecture and what it means to you to be in the cloud, because you started the conversation saying there's software as a service, there's these cloud. Help us understand your cloud implementation.
Okay. So, I mean, the name is because we're not super creative. We can come up with a better name. I mean, the way I think about it, the way we think about it is cloud is kind of means to an end. I think the distinction really is a software as a service system versus a kind of a piece of complicated software that you have to take on yourself and do a lot of work on it, customize to your needs and etc. before you can use it. We are at the software as a service spectrum. So, you know, I always give the CRM example. It's really old now, but Salesforce kind of was the first one that said, okay, no software, it's software as a service. But nowadays, you look at the industry, there's tons of new CRM companies, and none of them are trying to sell on-prem systems. They're all selling software as a service. So our thesis is that the industry for ETRM, CTRM is going to go in that direction. We built the architecture. It's you know, using modern technologies, using the latest stack of technologies. It's cloud native, and everything that cloud nativeness brings with it. So, for example, it's a multi-tenant system that allows a lot of shared global data. In a lot of implementations, you'll see with legacy systems, the first few weeks and maybe sometimes months is spent on getting reference data into the system. But when you look at that reference data, so, you know, holiday calendars and currencies and all the pricing indices, the various hubs, nodes, trading nodes and delivery nodes, pipelines, all of that information, 80-90% of that is really publicly available data. It's not proprietary data. At the end of the day, when you look at it, the proprietary data is really a handful of stuff like your books, your trader names, maybe your counterparties, that kind of stuff. In a multi-tenant environment, you can make this distinction between shared global data and tenant specific data, and you can put, secure walls between those. So that's one advantage. The other big advantage I see is kind of the point that I was trying to make earlier. With a system that's not really software as a service, you have to kind of wait between the time an industry change happens and when you can have access to the functionality that supports that industry change is a long period of time, because you have to wait for this upgrade cycle. With software as a service, that's kind of transparent. You don't know that the system is being, updated with new enhancements and new fixes and new types of functionality. So that's a big advantage. The agility that a multi-tenant true cloud native architecture gives you is a big advantage to us, but also to our users, because they have access to that functionality pretty much right away.
Okay, so maybe to wrap up and to conclude that topic, cloud, I think that was very informative already, but I assume you're fully cloud native solution and provider in that sense, right?
Yes, we're a fully cloud native solution, multi-tenant architecture, yeah.
Cool, which brings me to the next topic, more moving towards ecosystems and microservices, which is also, I think, a development that is utilized and supported by cloud architectures.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering a bit how you see this development. Do you see that the industry is really strongly demanding more microservice architectures? Are they willing, your clients that you have and prospects, are they willing to move in that direction, to move away from legacy vendors? Because that requires quite some know-how as well from an architectural point of view,
sure.
But also I think to fully utilize that setup, to be maybe also able on the business side to develop functionality in form of, I don't know, microservices developed by themselves. So what is your view on that, and how do you position yourself in that context?
Yeah, so we built the system based on a microservices architecture. We use a platform called Vertex, but that's, I think, good development practice, because building a new large enterprise level system as kind of modular pieces is good development practice, because it makes it more maintainable, it makes it easier to add stuff to it. It can grow without basically breaking. A monolithic system is going to be much more fragile as it grows in size, and you see that in legacy systems. But the nice thing that comes out of that good development or software architecture practice, that you get, from a user's perspective, you get modularity. You can say, we're going to only use the trading and risk management, but we don't care about your back office features, and that's what you take on. So the modularity, definitely. So microservices, yes, we are based on a microservices architecture, and our system is very modular, and that kind of enables us to not only serve our small customers' end-to-end needs, but also be able to go into these larger customers who are not ready to take on a full-on replacement project and say, we only need this piece, and we can serve them. The other thing that has to come with that is modularity, is the ease of integration. You have to have clear APIs. We have RESTful APIs for all of our microservices, ways, and you have to build these data integration tools so you can get stuff in. So we have basically, for anything that any business object that we have in the system, we can take that data in and take that data out in various formats, CSV, JSON files, and so on.
Okay, cool. I think you mentioned a very interesting topic from a client point of view, integration. So when you shift or move as a client towards more microservice-based architecture in the cloud, that has, of course, a strong impact on the client's architectural design, and he needs to figure out how he can integrate then or connect his systems and services with what you provide on the cloud. So maybe building also interfaces. But what I'm wondering in that context is this process of integration something that you leave to the client to figure it out and manage it, or do you provide let's say, an integration roadmap and really work hand in hand together with the client to build up the architectural design and setup that is required.
Yeah, so we're, I think, going through that journey now. We're still a, relatively small team compared to, say your legacy vendors out there. So the amount of time that we can, resources that we can spend on that kind of almost like an advisory role, I would say, or implementation support role is limited. So what we do is we work with a lot of partners to help us with that. Because the amount of time that's spent on that, in our experience, has been kind of upfront, kind of doing a nice plan about what is it that you're integrating and what purposes and what's going in and what's going out. And once that's done right, the rest is a lot easier, because on our side we have very clear APIs and we have multiple ways of communicating with our system. With proprietary analytics, you can plug in your proprietary analytics. You can get data in and out pretty easily in various data formats. We have clear APIs. We have one partner firm that has built a mobile app for like basic trade entry that actually talks to our system just using our APIs, and we didn't really have to do much, if any, hand holding with them. But the actual kind of what I would call the project management aspects of it, or the project planning aspects of it, we have some capacity, but we typically work with the customers or the partners that we work with to help the customer kind of get their heads around in the various pieces and how they fit together in their ecosystem, in the client's ecosystem.
So you work with the customer to get them set up, and then once you're on board, what kind of support model do you have?
So being on the cloud and web innate, everything's on in a web browser essentially. So we have a lot of the online support, but we haven't gone full on into that model yet. So we do have a support team. We know we would like CTRM, ETRM to be as easy as other software, to not really need that, but we're nowhere there. So we do have a regular support model. So emails and telephone and video calls, and we do all of that. And being kind of in multiple time zones helps us to support our clients kind of 24/7.
So you mentioned then, so we got the onboarding process, kind of a normal support model that I hear you talking about. So back to the ecosystem kind of question. I mean, you talked about some exchanges that you interoperate with. Is this more of like an app store approach? Is there more of what's your approach to the ecosystem, I guess? What do you think? And I saw you roll your eyes on the word app store, so I can tell it's probably not an app store. Sorry to call you.
That's why I didn't want to be on the video. No, just kidding. No, the app store. App store. I see. Salesforce tried to do that, and there's some, not to name any names, but there's some CTRM vendors, not ETRM vendors necessarily, that kind of have thought about it. I think App Store, just that term this is my personal opinion, it's kind of a gimmick. But in terms of building modular pieces that you can kind of take and try to connect, I think that is real. And using once, it already is happening today, right? So a lot of the large organizations have basically every ETRM out there. None of them really have a single ETRM. They a lot of times they pick best of breed, but more frequently it's up to the people who are actually doing that particular decision, right? So you're taking that decision. So they say, oh well, I like this system, so I want that, and the traders get that system. But basically, down the hall, there's another team that's actually using another system. So that's happening, kind of asset by asset, but also functionality. So a lot of people will be using maybe a different credit management system or limit management system. So the applications do have to talk to each other. And if you already, from the ground up, if you build them as modular pieces using a microservices type architecture and build the APIs and the ways to communicate with those, then that becomes a lot easier. And we've seen that happen in action with our customers.
Cool.
Okay. We'd like to shift a bit of topics now. I think that was very enlightening in terms of cloud and ecosystem and your approach. So quite modern, I would say, and on the front-running side when it comes to those two topics. But let's talk a bit about a topic that you mentioned at the very beginning, automation, or I think you mentioned algo trading. It's definitely on the rise in Europe, I think also North America, where you have your client base. So what kind of development do you see in when it comes to algo trading? Is it something that is strongly increasing? I mean, the demands of utilities and electricity producers, and what kind of demands do they have? Do they want to build their own strategies? Do they want to build out-of-the-box strategies? What do they need as a technical framework? And how do you, if you think already so far, because I think that's quite an advanced topic, how do you position yourself as CTRM-Cloud when it comes to algo trading?
Yeah, I mean, so I did mention algo trading because we see that happening in the industry. We personally do not have any, I mean, our clients can do algo trading. We don't have any clients who actually have algo trading programs today. We have clients in the US who are doing, relatively high-speed trading, kind of short-term trading, and that's how they're making, making their money. But we definitely see the algo trading coming. Now, it's kind of a roadmap item for us in terms of to evaluate whether there's something that we can do on top of what we already have. Our system is very performant and highly scalable, so it does support large trade volumes and the speed of a trade entry and so on. But for algo trading, there's the algorithm itself. I think, in my opinion, a lot of players will probably want to keep that proprietary. So you have to kind of you have to be thinking more of a platform or plug-in approach. But what we have to do on our side as an ETRM is to enable them to get those trades in the system, to watch the market, to give them enough tools so they can actually use it as a decision analysis tool. But also to be able to kind of consume those algo trades in the system and update your position so people can still see what's going on in real time. So the things that we have today that are in our kind of favor for algo trading type of setup is that we are highly performant, highly scalable. Everything's real time. You don't have to wait for batch processes. And we built the system in a way that we can take in all of that data at the speed that they come in. The piece that I think we're missing is probably the connectivity to all the various venues, trading venues. So definitely exchanges that's, we've made good progress there. Maybe we have a little bit more to do. But we have to kind of enable all of those other trading venues because you can't really have an algo trading program if you don't have those connections to execute those trades.
Yeah. So when you talk about that, you really mean being able to submit orders in the order book and not just receive then from the venues the trades that have been made. So you really have on your roadmap, that's I understood, building an execution layer for. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, order management is something that comes up. It's as a topic. Sometimes people think of it as an internal, the larger organizations kind of think of it as an internal order management. So we have customers who have, multiple trading desks and they're all putting in orders and they want like some quote unquote order management, kind of internal order management. And so for algo trading, you need to kind of enhance that concept into basically an actual order management system. It's an area that we're focusing on, but a lot of our roadmap is really governed by things like this that we see happening in the markets, but maybe more importantly, what our clients are kind of needing and asking us to do. So it's going to be a combination of those two things to see. There's a world of functionality to build. So as we're deciding on what comes first, we kind of put our current customers first and industry trends as a secondary item.
So what I've heard so far is that you have a cloud-based software as a service platform. I interact through APIs. It's designed to be easy onboarded, and you differentiate yourself because you kind of specialize in energy and gas and you're performant. Is that your pitch? Is that what you would tell me if you were coming to say, hey, come look at us? What are you differentiating on? What makes you not commodity? What makes you special? Did I cover it, or are there other things?
I think that's good. I like that. I also would add, I think that we have a really strong team. We're all experienced in both the technology and energy space, and that definitely helps. And that's part of our pitch. That's part of our elevator pitch. But also, our goal is to basically take, I was saying this before, ETRM, to make ETRM as self-service and as software as a service as possible. Basically taking it to the same kind of transformation that the CRM industry went through, 10, 20 years ago.
And then, so you're customer centric. The one thing I haven't heard much is your UX, right? You mentioned it's kind of a web front end. Great. Yep. A lot of stuff's a web front end. So tell us about your UX.
So we put a lot of effort into it. We use, not to get too technical. So we have, a JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML5, web UI. We're using a lot of reporting types of tools, various packages. I'm not going to name them, but lots of slicing and dicing that's possible. I would say, there are all these kind of professional, expensive BI tools out there. I would argue what we've built is a mini BI tool, so people don't really have to go outside to do their slicing and dicing and pivoting and charting, all of that. That's all in the system. It's a very modern looking UI because we just built it. And we've used kind of the latest UX kind of methodologies, technologies, and the ideas. And we're using some of the latest tools. So I'm quite proud of our user interface. Every time we do a demo, people actually say, "Oh, you got a really slick user interface." And I'm saying that not because we built something that doesn't exist anywhere else. It just doesn't yet exist in the ETRM space because everything out there is so old. Most things out there are so old, everything looks clunky. So we got the advantage to be compared to those guys. But if you were to compare us to other like web-based applications, a lot of the consumer web-based applications, we're basically at par with that. But a lot of reporting types of features that we focused on. A lot of slicing and dicing, pivoting, charting, that type of stuff.
So I have one kind of final question before we end up this segment, and I'll let Martin ask his kind of last questions in this segment. So what was uniquely, so you started your footprint in North America and you're moving to Europe. What did you need to do special, or what's so much different, moving to the European market? Are there different things that your considerations or different features that you needed to create to meet the needs to cross the pond, so to speak?
We had to have people, that's one. So we had to have people there to reach out. When we were reaching out from here, it was just not that easy. In terms of markets, there are definitely differences between the two markets, especially when it comes to electricity and gas. It's quite different. Fortunately, in my personal opinion, the European electricity and gas markets are actually a lot more straightforward. I prefer those. The US markets are a lot more convoluted. The whole settlement, the ISO settlement process is kind of a nightmare. So those nuances we had to pick up, but we have an experienced system. The team, we have people within the team who had worked in all of those markets before. So we knew that was coming. So it wasn't like, oh, okay, let's try to talk to some people. And then we found out. We already knew that we had to build those, and we were kind of along our way to build those. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten the clients in Europe that we got. But yeah, definitely different markets when it comes to energy trading.
Martin, any final questions before we change segments?
No, I'm good. Happy to move on.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to change gears and we're going to our speed round. It's 10 questions that are short answers. So not necessarily one word, but not necessarily 5 minutes. Just a brief answer if you do it or not. If anything seems redundant, it's only because we ask every vendor that's participating in the ETRM mini-series the same 10 questions. We're going to alternate back and forth. I will start off. So the first question, will the number of vendors for ETRM solutions shrink or expand, in your opinion, in the future?
Shrink. There'll be more consolidation.
Okay.
And I think that, I mean, not to prolong my answer, but you kind of already seeing it with the various acquisitions, but I'll stop there.
No, it's fair to give a short answer. It's fair to answer as you feel for it. It's not a one-word answer. All right, Martin, you're up.
Great. Then second question. So how many deals per minute must a modern ETRM system today be capable to import?
It's a good question. I mean, that hasn't been a problem for us because we don't really have algo trading type of customers. I personally come from a capital markets background where, FX trading, for example, the numbers for that was many, many digits. So let's say 1,000 trades per minute.
Okay.
So what commodity types and energy types are you offering, and which ones do you consider your greatest strengths?
We are cross commodity. Our level of the depth of the support is the electricity, natural gas, renewables. That's where we're basically that's where we shine. We do have customers in other commodities that we have customers in oil that where we sit side by side with other systems to where they handle their bulk logistics.
Okay, then the fourth question. Do you offer real-time position management module? And how real-time is it? So is it really event-driven when there is new trades? It automatically updates, or is it more scheduled?
Yes, everything in our system is in real-time. We have an event-based system where the microservices talk to each other in events. So the real-timeness of your risk and position reports really depend on the input data, which is two. One is the trades, and the other one is the incoming market data. And we have connectivity to various market data vendors, or clients can also build their own market data feeds into our system.
All right. So do you have an automated workflow for straight-through processing?
We do. We have that we built a trade workflow for trades and also the payment/invoicing process, and we will extend that to other processes in the system as well.
Okay. Can your ETM solution price Asian options?
Yes, we have a inbuilt Asian option pricing model, Turnbull Wakeman. We implemented Turnbull Wakeman model, but people can actually also plug in their own proprietary models if they'd like to.
Okay, cool.
So are you offering full integration and implementation services for your ETRM solution?
Yes, we do. Sometimes, depending on the needs, that might happen alongside with a partner, but we do. Sure.
Okay. So from your perspective, what is the biggest threat for third-party ETRM vendors, if there is any?
What is the biggest, biggest threat to third-party ETRM vendors?
Exactly, so threat or challenges.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be answering your question. So when I think about CTRM-Cloud, the biggest threat is that we mis-execute. I don't think the industry itself is going anywhere, and I think ETRM people will need ETRMs, and I don't think the only threat out there, which I don't think is a serious threat that's going to eliminate the ETRM industry, is people deciding to do more and more in-house. But the trends I see is actually people wanting to use their internal teams for more value add stuff and getting ETRM type of functionality and services from vendors. So execution, just missteps by the ETRMs themselves.
Cool. All right. So, what is your licensing model like, and do you anticipate it changing in the future?
Well, we have a subscription-based model, so no upfront license costs. That's I think almost pretty standard these days, and it's basically modules that you're using alongside with the number of users. We don't have any plans to change it. I don't see any need to change it.
Okay, then last question. Are you providing APIs for data exchange, and what is the technology behind it?
Yeah, so we have RESTful APIs, so you can basically access our microservices using RESTful APIs. The payload, the data in and out it can be in those APIs is JSON format, but we also have data in and out tools that use things like CSV, Excel, and XML and other formats that just for kind of data integration, data in, data out.
Awesome. Well, that's our 10 questions. You've gotten through the speed round. As we wrap up the program, I wanted to give you a minute or two to perhaps let our audience know why they should reach out to you. So if you want to give your best elevator pitch or why they should be talking to you.
So I think a lot of what I would call my elevator pitch, we've kind of touched on those topics. I think I'm very proud of the team we have. We have lots of experience in this space, the energy space, as well as the technology. And we've done this before. We have a lot of lessons learned from previous experiences. And that's a good thing. We're taking advantage of all of those things. And we have a really good system, really great user experience. Most importantly, it's always up to the market. You don't have to wait for the next upgrade to actually have the functionality that you need in your system. So yeah, definitely give us a call if you're trading energy or other commodities for that matter. And we'd be happy to find out what it is that you need and if we're a good fit.
Well, thank you so much for participating in the educational mini-series.
Thank you for having me.
For our audience, this concludes another episode of Insider's Guide to Energy ETRM mini-series. Please listen to the entire series. Find out what the difference is between the vendors. There's 13 vendors that have participated in this series, so we hope you enjoy it. You can find all the information you want at www.insidersguidetoenergy.com. Thank you so much for your time.